If there were a video game about Counter-Strike, much in the same way that there are video games about tennis or Madden, about football or basketball, what kind of use would that give us, right? I think it would give us the same kind of insight that these video games have actually given real sports, where they started to sort of compartmentalize and categorize the ways in which a player is good and the ways in which a player is lacking. Every time I ever played Madden, I was almost always obsessed with what people were rated in Madden. Because it's every year, it started out pretty simple how they rated people in what categories. And thankfully, they started to expand those categories where they started to like really have a lot of categories and be specific. If you look at a basketball game, for instance, like a video game basketball game, Harvey, then you would basically see, like, for just to give you an example, like LeBron James would have like an 84 beyond the arc, shooting. You'd have like maybe like a 92 in passing, and you'd have like maybe like a 90 something in dribbling, and his speed would be pretty high. So when we talk about like speed and strength, these are like the core values of a player, right? Usually in these sports games. And in a lot of ways, even though this is not at all true in Counter-Strike, because Counter-Strike's a game where everybody can pretty much improve at everything except for their natural like reflexes and reaction time. So these ratings would probably be like somebody's reflexes or their reaction times, just normally. But those ratings aren't very useful. What's more useful are like the mechanics of the game. So the kind of ratings that you might give players if there was like a, counter Anders Bloom Counter-Strike 2025 or something, right? If EA Sports, or not even 2015. So EA Sports comes to Anders and they tell him that. And then they come to like some technician, just like they do with Madden. And they say, okay, get all these players, get like so you could go into the game and you could like be Cloud9, and you could play against Na'Vi, and you could call the strats kind of, and the AI would do things, and you're meanwhile controlling like one player, like maybe Freakazoid in the beginning, and then you'll switch over to Ska or something and switch back to Shroud and switch like to nothing. And I mean, if this is what it would be like if there was an actual video game and you were playing. But imagine if instead, and we haven't reached this fucking level, by the way, in the game. But like, I'm talking, this would never happen until there are multi-million-dollar like massive ones, like in tennis. For each major, players are getting paid millions of dollars in salary, and the Counter-Strike major events are being watched by hundreds of millions of people. That, or a number exceeding that of, football or rugby or American football. So that's not where we're at. Which, like, for me is like, that's why those sports players act the way they do. And that's why there's this celebrity, which always bothers me whenever somebody who, like, how the game is now, there's no need to really take on that ego, that celebrity ego, because nobody outside of the Counter-Strike world knows who the fuck you are, okay? But in like football or people know who LeBron is, they know who Floyd Mayweather is in boxing, so you become kind of like a household name outside of your own niche, if you will, right? And that's when you're an actual celebrity, and maybe you can start acting like a complete prick. But to do it when you're making like a $3,000 salary, a $2,000 salary, and losing at every single chance you get to get a prize pool, I don't know if that's very relevant or advisable under any circumstances. Like, relevant as in you have to keep a barrier between you and anyway. So in this game, right, there would basically be all these different ratings. So what would the ratings be, right? And I thought this is like the meat of what I'm trying to say, and I didn't even get to it until 5 fucking minutes in, because I'm a complete piece of shit. Psych. I love myself. So, crosshair flick precision, I think, would be a rating. So let's say you'd have the first rating, right? And it would be like reflexes. And like that would be like Clive would be like a 12, Nitro would be like a 94, you know, or Skadoodle would be like a 94. And then you'd have like reaction time, which is pretty much the fucking same thing, but whatever. It's like a video game about a video game. It doesn't make a lot of sense. There's all these different ratings. And then you'd have like crosshair flick precision. So just someone's ability to precisely move their crosshair from one side to another area. And you have crosshair flick speed. So how quickly can they do it, right? And the combination of both kind of shows your pure aim. That's pure aim right there. Your speed and your precision when you're moving your crosshair is your pure aim. Then you have crosshair placement, which is more or less a discipline. But so are a lot of ratings in these sports video games. They end up just being really how disciplined you are. Or the habits, the technique, the footwork, so to speak. So, like, that kind of technique would kind of like be like in cornerback. They have like ratings for cornerbacks, how well they can cover. Now, another thing, a huge distinction that I want to make, is people just talk about movement, but they kind of conflate the two. And this is why it's this topic is relevant, really, is because people just say movement. He has good movement. Okay, well, I think there are two separate kinds of movement. There's A to B movement, meaning like how well you can move from one spot on the map to another spot on the map. So if I were to get Skadoodle, okay, and I were to say, Ska, I want you to go into T-spawn on Mirage. I want you to go up a ramp. Or no, I want you to go through Palace, out towards CT spawn, back through CT spawn, running with your knife out, into window room, jump from window room to catwalk, and then go from catwalk into B site, jump on van, go all the way through here, into BAPS, BAPS, what is BAPS? BAPS, jump down to underpass, run down, go up mid, and go around, kind of like a circuit. You know, people should make servers where you basically, like, how fast you can do a certain track in the game. I think that would be really cool. Like with little, what's that called? Like in any kind of race in a video game, you have to go through the fucking checkpoints. Yeah, with all these different checkpoints that you gotta go through. Anyway, so if you were to take Skadoodle and you were to have him do this, and then anybody watching this video, you were to do this, Skadoodle's time would be a lot faster than your time. Skadoodle could make this circuit on Mirage, my circuit, Clive's circuit on Mirage, a lot faster than you could. Because his A to B movement is a lot better. His movement of just getting from one point on the map to another point on the map is a lot better. And that helps with so many things. That helps with, like, flow. That helps with, like, just being able to position yourself somewhere in a very quick amount of time. It helps with catching people off guard. Anyway, I'm sure you know how it helps. I don't have to fucking belabor any more points than I already fucking have. Then you have a whole different side of movement, I think. Gunfight movement. So a lot of people, when they are in gunfights, they aren't necessarily very hard to kill. I used to do this all the time, and I'm only now getting better at it. I would just wide peek, counter strafe, spray. Either I killed you or I didn't. Like it was just that. Like if my shot was on, you were dead. If my shot was off, I was dead. And it's like the dumbest thing ever. But that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about how fucking terrible a player I am, which I am. I'm talking about gunfight movement, which is like your ability to not get hit. In a gunfight, your ability to move around, to strafe around, and not die, while still having the accuracy and precision of your bullets, right? Because your movement in this game, thank Allah, I'm not religious, by the way. I'm actually like a staunch atheist. That is so fucking cringy to say. your gunfight, your movement determines how accurate your bullets are, which is kind of why I personally hate the SMGs in this game, but I understand why they exist. It's fine. Ultimately, if I have an AK-47 and you have an MP something, I should be able to kill you every time. Another really strong rating, like a very important one, is positioning. You'll see a lot of players are able to position themselves in places around the map that logically make sense as to the information that they're being given, right? And they're able to place themselves, like, it's also a creative thing. So it's not just a logical thing where you're logically able to understand, okay, my teammate is here, I'm here, we have this information that this is happening here and that this is not here, so I'm not going to expose myself to this, but only expose... It's like kind of like where you expose yourself. It's very important, really. But it's also creative in that you can play these off angles, if you will, and that in turn, if it makes logical sense, means that your positioning is actually extremely good because you're constantly catching people off guard. Another thing is like anticipation. So anticipation is more of like an awareness attribute, right? So it's your ability to anticipate what the enemy is going to do based on what they've done before. People who are very intelligent have pattern... All humans, actually. We're kind of built with pattern recognition software in our head. And it's funny that I say that because we were able to analogize how the human brain works by making artificial intelligence and having pattern recognition software. And we're like, oh. And it's kind of like windshield wipers in a way, where you're learning, you're figuring something out retroactively. And retroactively applying it to yourself. And this is exactly the same process that's happening in this video, where I'm talking about Counter-Strike. But the way I'm talking about Counter-Strike is by looking at a video game through the lens of it being a video game about a video game, which is the exact kind of ludicrous absurdity that I absolutely enjoy. So... beyond anticipation, which... Actually, not beyond it. I still haven't really talked about it. So we have pattern recognition software, and you'll see players like Sav, for instance, like Pugstars like him, are able to anticipate, and it's not just Sav, it's a lot of people, what they recognize patterns, and they're able to anticipate what people are more likely to do, what they're more likely to be. Of course, for him... the people he's playing against, it's very predictable and it's very easy in a pug, or all of us are playing against. But he's still able to do it, and do it pretty well, obviously. That's a major aspect of his game, I would say. He catches on to it very quickly, and he exploits it. Whatever it is. Whatever pattern you're doing, whatever indicator will give him sort of reason to believe that something will happen, he will counter that something. Or he will do something specifically to put himself in a position where he will be there with his amazing, mechanics to kill everybody, pretty much. So that's a big part. And it's kind of like giving attention to where things would be. So it's kind of like being like, I feel like they're going to rush B, and they do, and you're there. You decided to play B with your other B teammates, even though you're an A player, and it worked out. So all players can have anticipation. It's extremely helpful if in-game leaders do. Now, the biggest aspect is probably your deductive reasoning or decision-making in this game. I truly believe that. Like, yes, mechanics are extremely important, especially, I would say, from, like, Silver 1 all the way to, like, Intermediate. All you should be working on, really, and this is my biggest flaw, is mechanics. Is your crosshair flick precision, your crosshair flick speed, your crosshair placement, your gunfight movement, and your A to B movement. So, if you are able to master these 5 things, of course, you might be all aim, no brain. But brain sort of either comes with just an innate intelligence, and it's either there or it isn't, like your innate ability to like logically reason. And I shouldn't say innate, because I believe intelligence is fluid. I believe the brain is a muscle, you can work it out. But some people understand deductive reasoning better. So from the information that you get on the map, from your teammates or on the mini-map or whatever, you can deduce certain things about what's going on. Like, if I push a certain area, I can be like, okay, they're either going to be long A or they're going to be connector. Those are the only two options. So that's where we should, really look at. And then I could, we could deduce something else, and we could conclude something else, right, from there on. And then you have decision making. So you have deductive reasoning. That's a huge thing, just in general. And just being able to do some deductive reasoning would even allow you to kind of have anticipation and to counter things and to know where to go on the map in certain circumstances. But a lot of it happens with decision making as well. As you know, in this game, there are good decisions, you could say, and there are bad decisions. So the decision makings, if it was a rating, it would be like one of those fluff ratings where it's just something there. There's nothing you can do about the rating itself. It's more of like an amalgate. Like, you take all these other ratings and they come out to be what the decision making rating is. So it's like the sum of a lot of different other ratings, right? And one of those ratings would be like your teammate awareness. So you'll see some players play alone, like Desi, and it seems like they just have no regard for where their teammates are on the map. Just absolutely none. Like, kid doesn't even look at his minimap or something. And then you have players who are actually, like, extremely good at being aware of where their teammates are, and this helps with, like, spacing. This helps with so many different other... So this category could have other categories, like spacing, cross-firing, blah, blah, blah. So having good teammate awareness is kind of like... If at any point you've ever died, and then you get to view your teammate and you're like, what the fuck is he doing? Why aren't we playing off of each other, is what you should be asking yourself, really. Because I feel like anytime two players are near each other but they're not playing off each other, both parties are at fault. You should be communicating. There shouldn't be just some kind of synergy where you feel like they just captain you and decide, I'm going to do what you feel is best for us to do. I don't think anything is necessarily wrong as long as you're doing it together. So, but in that same vein, there are ways to play this game where you're aware of your teammates and you're kind of like doing shit with them together, where you're spaced properly so you can get a trade, where you're cross-firing. It kind of makes sense, CT side. It's like you're doing, you can tell where you're somewhere and you have an idea of what you want to do. You have the anticipation to know that this is the right play and this is the good decision making. And your teammate doesn't have that kind of same anticipation, and he's somewhere off in another area of the map, looking like in your bomb site, your general vicinity, looking somewhere else, sort of watching. He's worried about something else, and you're like, you know what? If I feel like they're, like, for instance, on Overpass, you feel like they're going to come out long B, and you're in a spot, and if he were in another spot, you guys would really hold it down. But instead, like, he's somewhere very, very like he's further away where he can't necessarily help you. Like he's peeking out in and out of sandbags or something like that. I don't know. Backside of connector or something. Like by the little fucking window or something. Or in the cubby, because he wants to make kind of like a solo play. And he's just sitting there not peeking anything. So if they come up water and they just walk, he's not going to see it. So something like that, right? But that's generally just teammate awareness, right? Togetherness, so to speak. And then there comes, a rating, which I think this rating here, when the game is played at a high level, even when it's not, but when it's played at a high level especially, really separates the men from the boys, so to speak. And it separates, like, main from, like, professional. And even in professional, you'll see not everybody has it. But it's basically decisiveness or flow. I like to call it flow. So this basically means that on the map, you would see a player just, he does something, he goes right on to doing something else. There's no choppiness there. It's seamless. He's just seamlessly moving throughout the map. He knows exactly what he wants to do. He's getting information. He's making on-the-fly decisions, and he's just seamlessly going with them. Now, of course, if you're viewing somebody it might not look like this because you don't know what their IGL is calling, and they're, they could be doing this, blah, 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 and they're going here, and they have this idea to go here, and then their IGL says, wait, no, let's just throw the cross smokes, and now let's go back and go back out. And that's fine. Like, that should never be counted against somebody's decisiveness or their flow. Now, with that said, I think even at like the lower, very low levels of the game, this idea of decisiveness or flow, you could see it. I think this is why people, when they smurf, they do really well, other than the fact they're playing against people who are lower competition than them. Because it's like your flow or your decisiveness is a lot about your confidence. So having confidence in something, whether you're right or wrong, oftentimes is a lot better than just being completely indecisive and maybe just going, thinking, I'll do this. No, I'll move back here and do this. This is better. You always want to have a certain amount of decisiveness and and having decisiveness and confidence comes in kind of being like assured in knowing what either the proper or the completely counter meta play is in any given circumstance. Okay? And then you have risk-taking. So your risk-taking ability, and this kind of plays into the next one, which is more about counter meta. So your risk-taking ability is you're kind of like, think about risk analysis, okay? When I ask you to think about this, I want you to think about like poker. In poker, there are a lot of plays that somebody could make that don't make a lot of sense, considering how much risk there is and how much reward there could possibly be. Or even like for stock portfolios, for investment strategies, for anything. There's a certain amount of risk analysis and risk taking that you have to be good at. You have to be able to weigh the risks of what you're doing and kind of understand that sometimes if your teammate's somewhere else, you can push into like the A bomb site to see if somebody's there, and if they're there, you kill them, and if they're not, you die to him, but you give your teammate, who's somewhere around mid, let's say, with the bomb, the information. He makes a play for information, and you give your teammate this information so he can run to B, plant the bomb at a really good place, throw a smoke, plant for checkers, and sort of hold B main hold a very powerful spot, basically, in a 1v1, and play it properly from there and just win it from there. So there's different risks that we take in this game, right? Or else, like, if you didn't take any risks, you just wouldn't get anything done, basically. I mean, you'd be playing scared the whole time. And if you've ever played a scrim against people who maybe are worse players than you, you know how easy it is to beat players once you get in their head and they start playing scared, like a frightened turtle. Another thing for risk-taking is creativity. So this kind of comes hand in hand. You might think it like creativity is just this artistic thing, but psychologically, if you look at creativity, it actually has a lot to do with taking risks. Social risks, if you look at like comedic or artistic creativity, just risks with your art, with vulnerability itself. And if you look in the game, you doing something that's so counter meta, if you will, or so anti-proper, is just your ability to be creative, really, and to think of new solutions to old problems or old scenarios. Another rating that could be in would be like flash effectiveness. So how effective are the flashes you throw, really? And I think this is such an important fucking thing, especially for support players, right? And then flash dodging, that's pretty important. Maps have been won and lost based on the fact that players CT side just put themselves in positions where they can't dodge flashes, and they're blind. Like, it's just easy pickings. The terrorist side will throw these flashes, or the counter-terrorist side will throw these dank-ass pop flashes, and they'll just kill them. They'll just kill blind people, and they have no chance in hell. Or they just throw these flashes, and the terrorists come in, and everybody's pretty much blind. You can see it in the demo. And it's like, wow. You guys are playing B-side on overpass. You have absolutely no idea how to dodge flashes. You're sitting completely wide in the open or something, and you're just getting blinded and shot in the fucking face. Smoke knowledge would be another one. Rudimentary one. I think right around the Gold Nova level, you should start knowing pretty much all the smokes in the game. But with that said, there are a lot of players who are fucking amazing and know pretty much like one or two smokes because they don't really need to. They let their teammates do that. They're there to frag. Dude, I'm here to frag, dude. Then you have sound awareness. So this is just like information gathering. This is part of your ability to find various indicators and have anticipation or have deductive reasoning based on those indicators. So sound awareness would be your ability to actually process these indicators. That being sound. So sound is a pretty big indicator. And in this game, it means quite a bit. So your sound awareness, you knowing exactly where people are, how many people, pretty important, especially if you can do it while your teammates are talking. Another one would be like communication. Communication is one of the biggest fucking skills, and I fucking hate how in this game people at the main or open or IM or any level, they don't understand. I guess they just don't watch enough POVs, but I've been watching POVs since I've been playing this game, really. And like, I wanted to learn everything that I could about it, so I started watching, like, POVs in different languages, complexity POVs, guy by power POVs, whatever the fuck I could. And what I noticed is good teams are just constantly talking. They're just constantly commenting everything. Constantly commenting what they're doing, what they're seeing, how they feel things might be. And then if somebody needs silence, they just say, like, I need silence, I need to hear. And then everybody goes quiet. Or, people know, like in a 1v2 or like a 2v something, to just be quiet. You know what I mean? Plus, there's less people who are alive, so it doesn't matter. And these are basically the ratings, I would say. Maybe there are more. If you could think of some other ratings and you got this far in the video, go ahead and feel free to put them down. But this is basically like trying to look at a video game in terms of it being a video game and drawing conclusions and really coming down to understanding the game better and understanding your role better in the game this way. So the same way like in a basketball game, if you had like Slasher, you might want him to have certain sort of characteristics, or like you want your rim protector to be really good at blocking and low post defense and stuff like that. So these are also some categories that maybe can make people understand the game, maybe not.